We'll start off by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipada viramani sikapadang samadhiyami, Atinatana viramani sikapadang samadhiyami, Kamisu nicacara viramani sikapadang samadhiyami, Musawata viramani sikapadang samadhiyami, Sura miraya majapamadhatana viramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, 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 sadhu. Just wait for the man who makes sure I've got plenty of roti canai in the morning. Takes care of my rice porridge needs. We don't start without you. So, today's talk is about living a lay Buddhist lifestyle. And, you know, in today's fast-moving, frantic world, it's a question that often comes up, is how can I as a Buddhist live in society today? You know, it seems to be everything's about getting more. Bigger house, faster car, more. But you know, 2,500 years ago, the same question was being asked. And people were asking in the time of the Buddha, how does a lay person live in society? So the question remains the same. It hasn't changed a heck of a lot. But what may have changed is the level of greed, the level of anger or hatred, and the level of delusion that people live in these modern times. One thing we see a lot of these days is children disrespecting their parents. They disrespect their teachers, and they disrespect their elders. Not all children, by the way, but children. There are children out there that do it. And this is making life very difficult, because when we see our children being disrespectful like this, our children are our future. So what future do we have when our children are like this? Now, some of you were here last week, so I might be covering a couple of things that I mentioned last week. in the West, in many countries in the West, in my own country, in New Zealand, we're not allowed to physically chastise our children. As you're all aware, it was last year the Malaysian couple that found themselves spending a little bit of time in the Swedish Hilton because they disciplined physically their children. It becomes quite a shock to them. Smack your kids, the police turn up. Go to jail. But this is what it's like in many Western countries. We're actually not allowed to physically discipline our children. And this actually came about for very good reasons. And that is, some parents didn't know how to discipline their children. And so parents would lash out in anger. You know, there are people who say you should never discipline your child when you're angry with your child. Give it some time, wait an hour, then deal with the situation. Because quite often if we deal with the situation immediately, then we're angry. And so what we found was happening was, parents would beat their children. And, they beat the child around the head. This would often cause permanent hearing damage to the child. They'd be hit so hard around the side of their head that they would rupture their eardrums. Or they'd punch them so hard in the side of their head that they could suffer from brain damage. Children ended up in the hospital with broken ribs, broken arms, broken legs. And some children died as a result. And so they enacted a law that said that we weren't allowed to discipline our children. Unfortunately, our children got quite clever with this and decided that because we couldn't discipline them, they didn't actually have to behave themselves. So your child's playing up and you sit down and say, you stop that or I'm going to smack you, and that kid just looks at you and goes, you smack me, I'm calling the police. What can you do? And so it's become very difficult for parents to discipline their kids. And so we need to work out other ways of dealing with the children. And even here, we are still allowed to physically discipline your children. We have to be very careful how we go about disciplining our children. Beating the living daylights out of your child is not the way to bring a child up. This is bringing a child up living in fear. So we have to be very careful. And then of course, there's the workplace. Most of us these days have to go to work. We don't have the luxury of being able to sit at home because one of our partners makes so much money that one of us can afford to live at home and we can still educate the children, clothe the children, feed the children, pay the rent or pay the mortgage. And so ends up with most of us having to go out to work this day and age. And sometimes at work that can seem like a bit of an uphill struggle when you're a Buddhist. We get bombarded by what we see on the television. I don't know, I haven't watched TV in this country, but in New Zealand it seems like there's a program on for 10 minutes and then we have a commercial break. It's like, buy this, get that. You need to wear this type of shoe. You have to have this kind of a car. Or even go so far as to literally make you think that if you don't get these things, you're a bad person. Or if you don't buy this for your child, it's going to grow up being bullied at school and become a psychopath. Unless you buy the latest gadgets. So we get bombarded with these things. You see now, all these advertisements, earn more, work less. All these things that we're trying to chase after, they brainwash us. And I know this. My mother used to be in advertising, so I know how it works. And if she sees this online, she's gonna hit me. But she's gonna say that all that advertising work that she did paid for my education and everything else. We've had arguments about this before when I told her that I thought her profession was a bit dishonest. It probably doesn't go down too well when you're 13 years old and you tell your mother she's making a dishonest living. So, when you get older, don't try this. Don't try this stunt at home like they say on the television. So, of course, you could become bhikkhus or bhikkhunis. That would take half the problem out of your life. But then, for most of us, that's actually not a realistic option. So, we need to work out how we're supposed to survive out there in what I call layman's land. And it's a minefield out there. It's really quite tricky, quite treacherous. So, first of all, you're all here tonight. You're listening to a Dhamma talk. And it's always a good start to actually come to the temple, go to a centre, and listen to a Dhamma talk. Because the Buddha said it was necessary to hear the Dhamma from another. As I said last week, that also includes now we can read the suttas, but it's nice to come together and listen to somebody giving a talk. But sometimes the way the speaker, whether it's a monk, whether it's a lay person, gives the talk, sometimes they come from different angles, gives you a new way of thinking about things. And it's never bad to come at things from different angles. So we come and we listen to the Dhamma. But then, listening to the Dhamma is not enough. We have to put the Dhamma into practice in our daily lives. And in one of the suttas, it says, listening to the Dhamma is likened to a man who watches another man's cattle. He doesn't share in the cattle. No matter how many times he counts the cattle of the other man, he receives no benefit from those cattle. When we're unwell, we go off and we see the doctor. And we say to the doctor, I don't feel well. The doctor asks you to describe the symptoms, and he or she listens very carefully to what symptoms it is that you're describing, and then they write you out a prescription. So you take that prescription down to the pharmacy and you hand it to the chemist, and the chemist goes out the back and comes back with all these medications and says how many pills you have to take, how many times a day you have to take them. Do you take them before meals? Do you take them after meals? And how long you should take this medication for. So we go home and we think to ourselves, well, I went and saw the doctor today. And I told the doctor what was, how I was feeling, and the doctor worked out what was wrong, and he prescribed some medicine for me. And you take the medicine out of the little paper bag and you read it. And take 1 tablet 3 times daily after food. Okay. So one in the morning before eating. Okay. So you read all the instructions and then you put the medicine in the medicine cabinet. And that's a wise doctor. Look at the medicine he's given me. He's a good doctor. But you don't take the medicine. A few days later you might go back to the doctor and say, I'm still feeling a bit sick. Maybe the doctor gives you some more medicine. So you go back home again and you read the label and you go, oh, this doctor's wonderful. Boom, back in the medicine cabinet with everything else. You could die not taking the medicine. The medicine's right there. But you could actually die if you don't take the medicine that the doctor prescribed you. And why? Because you didn't follow the doctor's instructions. You heard what the doctor said. You thought it sounded good. And that was it. You left it there. You know, if you went, there's a restaurant down the road here, it's called Very Delicious. It's just around the corner. For anybody that doesn't know, it's just around the corner. Very, very nice restaurant. They do very, very good food. So, supposing one day we thought, let's go down to Very Delicious. Feeling a bit hungry, so all of us will go down to Very Delicious and we'll have some lunch. So we go down to Very Delicious and we have a look. They've got some pictures up, some signs, what it is that they sell at the different little places. And well, that looks good. Yeah, that's nice. We'll sit at the table, we look at the menu, and then we get up and we go out. Would our hunger be satisfied? No. We'd still be hungry. No use going to the restaurant and just looking at the menu and looking at the pictures. It's not going to help. You have to call over the waiter or the waitress or go up to the individual counters and you have to order your food. And even that's not enough. You can order your food and put it on the table and look at it. Still not going to fill you up. You've got to eat the food. Now if we eat the food, now our hunger will be taken care of. We won't be hungry for a while at least. Right? And it's like the Dhamma. We listen to the Dhamma. We pay good attention to the Dhamma. But then we have to go out from here and we have to practice the Dhamma. We have to put it into our daily life. So we know that the Buddha taught us the Noble Eightfold Path. But as I say, knowing the Eightfold Path is one thing. But if we don't practice the Eightfold Path, then we're just wasting our time. Earlier on I was saying about some of the children not respecting their elders. And sometimes that's the responsibility of the elders. Not always. My brother Eric was reading out my little biodata here. And it said my family brought me up teaching me right from wrong. I knew stealing, lying, all these sorts of things, they were wrong. This was instilled into me as a child. Even in my first primary school, the motto of the primary school was "Manners maketh the man." And so you're getting taught these things from a very young age. But of course, as it goes on in my bio, at the age of 13, I was, already getting into trouble with the law. So, the parents can't be held responsible all of the time. But there are some parents who are quite irresponsible. The things that we teach our children is a psychological survey that I read once. It said everything a child is going to learn in life, the pegs that it hangs everything on, will be in place by the age of 7. So everything you teach the child from the day it's born to the age of 7, you've practically put everything, you've structured that child's life, and then it will hang its own things on as it continues to grow. So we have to be very careful what pegs we actually put up for our children. Are they going to be good pegs? Are they going to be bad pegs? So as Buddhists, we have to the best of our ability, live a moral and upright lifestyle. We see people They run around from temple to temple, from centre to centre, making merit. But they don't even practice sila. I've said before, I've seen people come into the temple, not this one, made that perfectly clear. I haven't seen it in this temple, not even in this country. But I've seen people come into the temple drunk and then asked to be put on 5 precepts. Excuse me? You're having a laugh. I've actually seen people come into a temple that drunk that they've offered me a bottle of whiskey. And it wasn't even good whiskey. It was cheap local rubbish. But, I mean, how can you come into a temple and offer a monk a bottle of whiskey? It's just craziness. How drunk do you have to be to come into a temple and offer a monk a bottle of whiskey? And then go, can you put me off 5 precepts, please? No. Go home, sleep it off. You know, I've seen politicians and army officers, after they've been responsible for a bloody clampdown on innocent civilians, going to the temple to make merit. It doesn't work like that. You can't go around being involved in the killing of innocent beings. You're not even supposed to kill non-innocent beings, but you know, and then go to the temple and make merit and believe that everything's going to be okay. I mean, it doesn't work like this. It's like, you know, if you have a white piece of cloth and it's dirty and you want to dye it red or blue or whatever, so you dip it in the dye, it's not going to come out looking like a nice blue piece of cloth. It's going to come out looking like a dirty piece of blue cloth or a dirty piece of red cloth. The only way you can hope to have a nice piece of cloth is to wash it first. Wash the dirt off. You might have to wash it a few times, you know. And then when you get most of the dirt out, the stains out, now you can dip it in the dye and have a nice piece of cloth. Otherwise you're just wasting your time. So these people, they want to make merit, but they don't want to give up their lifestyles. So we need to change the way that we live our lives. It's no good just wearing a Buddhist brand. Kind of like wearing a Batman suit. Doesn't make you Batman. Might look a bit like Batman, but you ain't Batman. You know? I'm saying, once when I first became a Buddhist, I didn't really change my lifestyle. I just called myself a Buddhist. In fact, some of you here know that on the very day that I became a Buddhist, I went to the pub to celebrate being a Buddhist. I went to the pub to celebrate the Dalai Lama giving me 5 precepts. My life didn't change a great deal. So I was using a name, but I wasn't a Buddhist. And we see this a lot in some countries, because people will say, I come from such and such a country, therefore I'm a Buddhist. Well, see, being born in Thailand, in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, it doesn't make you a Buddhist. It makes you Sri Lankan or Thai or Burmese. If I was born at McDonald's, I wouldn't be a Big Mac. So we can see that it's not about where you're born. We see the same in the West. Certain countries, they're called Catholic countries or Protestant countries. So people identify, I was born here, I'm a Catholic. I was born here, no, you're not. And even the fact that when you're 3 months old and your folks take you to church and the priest or whatever sprinkles some water on your head, it don't make you nothing, just an angry baby normally, you know. We're not born into a religion. Religion is something that we practice, you know. And so we have to become Buddhist. And you guys are quite lucky because you're not from a Buddhist country. So I think when you're not from a Buddhist country, you actually have to try a little bit harder sometimes to be a Buddhist, you know? Because it's not always easy to be a Buddhist in a non-Buddhist country. So we do have to practice a little bit harder, you know? We can't just put the label on our car, you know? We have to walk the Buddha's way. So wherever we go, we have to have awareness. When I became a monk, one of the first things I was aware of was the fact that being a foreign monk, people were going to be watching me very closely. I had to be a better monk than the other monks. Even things that weren't against the Vinaya, I had to be very careful that I didn't do it anyway, just in case people thought it might be against the Vinaya, because as a foreign monk, people are observing us, watching us very, very carefully. And as Buddhists, living in a non-Buddhist nation, we have to do the same thing. Because when people hear us refer to ourselves as Buddhist or as Christian or whatever, they start to look. Is this person living the way they're supposed to live? They will judge us by our actions. So we have to be constantly aware. We have to be constantly aware of our bodily actions, aware of our verbal actions, and aware of our mental actions. Because don't forget, it's our thoughts that give rise to all of these things anyway. Good thoughts will give rise to good things, bad thoughts will give rise to bad things. So we're watching what we do, because wrong things come about through the body, through the speech, through the mind. Right things come from the body, the speech, and the mind. So we need to be very aware. Is what I'm thinking wholesome or unwholesome? Is what I'm about to say wholesome or unwholesome? Is what I'm about to do wholesome or unwholesome? These are questions we have to constantly ask ourselves, constantly have to be on guard, because it's very, very easy for us to do something that's unwholesome. I think I was talking last week about the number of you guys who have to drive to and from work. Now, I've stood out here in the morning sometimes and I've watched the traffic coming up the road. What a nightmare. And I think, how far have these people travelled to get to this point? And where do they have to go to? How long have they sat in this horrendous traffic? And that's just going to work. You've still got to come home from work in the evening. And so what do? We sit there. Now if we're really clever, we have some CDs of some Dhamma talks going. That way we don't give inappropriate hand signals when people cut in front of us. Don't use inappropriate language when people cut in front of us. Because it's really funny, because, you know, when you want to change lanes, you think, what is wrong with that person? Couldn't he see I was trying to change lanes? Goodness sakes. Couldn't he have just backed off for a moment to let me in? But then when somebody else wants to come in front of you, you just kind of speed up a little bit. It's like, oh, no you don't. Yeah, we want people to let us in, but we don't want to let other people in. And I think if we let people in, maybe the karma will come around that people will let us in when we need to come in hard, you know. So we just keep practicing being quite polite. And you never know, it could be, I don't know, here in New Zealand sometimes the police, they see you doing something good and they pull you over and they give you a little gift. I remember in Auckland they would, you know, I think it's about April they have Easter, you know. We have all these Easter eggs and stuff people like to eat. And you'd be driving down the road and next thing you've got a police car behind you, got lights going on, you're like, oh, pull you in. Was it speeding? Stopped at the traffic lights. Maybe one of my tail lights is out. And the cop gets out and goes, excuse me ma'am, do you know why I pulled you over? You've got absolutely no idea, officer. I noticed you let a vehicle in front of you about a kilometre down the road. I thought that was very polite. You know, have an Easter egg. And the police do that because they actually say that they're not all about being nasty to us. Sometimes they actually have to show how much they do appreciate our good driving. So I don't know, perhaps that's something that you could instigate in this country. I don't know if it'll work or not. It'll be a nice thing if it does, you know? And that way, in actual fact, people stop hating the police as well. It's a win-win situation. So, we're aware, so like when you're in these traffic jams, and you see somebody coming to cut you up, stop and think momentarily, how am I going to react? Is my reaction going to be wholesome? Or is my reaction going to be unwholesome? And you just imagine if somebody who's trying to get in front of you, they need to get across, they need to turn somewhere. And you're sitting there not letting them, and giving them rude hand gestures. And you've got some little Buddha image hanging down off your rear vision mirror. Oh dear. What are they going to think when they see this? And we do, don't we? We have little Buddha statues sitting up on our dashboard and little danglies hanging down. So we have to be very, very careful when we are giving inappropriate hand signals to other drivers, because we're bringing the teachings of the Buddha into disrepute. So if we're fast enough, we can actually work out if something's beneficial or non-beneficial, virtuous or non-virtuous. And we get fast like this by practicing on a daily basis. Not once a week when we come to the temple to listen to a Dhamma talk, or once a week when we come to the temple to give Dhamma. It has to be a daily practice. When we practice it daily, it becomes a natural part of our lives. See, we've taken rebirth in the human realm. And we all know the story about the blind turtle in the great ocean with the yoke and all that sort of stuff. We know how precious, how rare this human rebirth is. Not only have you got a human rebirth, but you have a human rebirth at a time when we still have the teachings of the Buddha. And you're allowed to come and listen to the teachings of the Buddha. That's even more rare. There are people who would not be allowed to come and listen to the teachings of the Buddha. So how lucky are we that we have this human rebirth? So we need to make the most of it. Don't squander it. Like, be like, woohoo! Every morning when you wake up, woohoo! I figured I was listening to, I can't remember who it was. It was a Western monk, and he was in the forest tradition, and he was saying that one of the other monks, he used to do that every morning when he'd wake up. He said he hated it. How dare you? Woo-hoo, at 4 o'clock in the morning. But this monk didn't particularly like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But he got positive about the fact that he had to get up at 4 o'clock. Woo, you know. he didn't mean it. It's this fake it until you make it routine that we do sometimes, you know. There's nothing wrong with faking it until you make it. It actually helps, you know. Sometimes, you know, there are things that we don't want to do. The best way to do something you don't want to do is with a happy face. Because if you do it with a miserable face, the task really, really gets difficult. So if your boss says, "Oh, I want you to go and clean the toilets," not, "Oh, man, that's a terrible job," you know, because you'll just suffer throughout your entire job. So do a little bit of a, and you'll actually find that, you know, the job stays the same, but your mental attitude alters, you know. So we have to get these little bit of who's going in our lives. So we've been given this human rebirth, and we've been taught the Noble Eightfold Path. But we have to walk this path. You know, if I want to go back to New Zealand, then I know I have to catch an aeroplane. So I have to go to the airport. But that's no good. I'm sitting at the airport going, "Oh, there's my aeroplane, cool. Let's go into New Zealand." And I'll sit there and I'll watch it going up the taxiway, and I'll sit there and I'll watch it take off. I ain't going to get to New Zealand sitting in the transit lounge. I have to actually get on that aeroplane and fly to New Zealand. Going to the airport is only part of getting back to New Zealand. It's an important part. I do have to get to the airport, but I have to continue on through. I have to board the flight. I have to buckle my seat. It has to take off, and it has to get me to New Zealand. So we need to start travelling along this path, not just knowing about this path. If we just know about the path, we'll get nowhere. So we have to start walking it. And so we have to start in our own lives. There's no use telling other people how they should live if we don't live that way ourselves. And so we have to start with right view, and the right view is the understanding of the Noble Eightfold Path. Without right view, you cannot hope to progress along the path. Because with right view, we understand the Four Noble Truths. And you've got to remember there's four of them. Because there seems to be some people stuck on the first one. Miserable looking people. God, blimey. I think they walk around sucking lemons all day. Eh? A Buddhist shouldn't look miserable. A Buddhist should look happy, because it tells us that yes, in life there is suffering or there's stress or it's unsatisfactory, however you want to translate it. But then it tells us why we have this problem. And then it says, you don't got to have this problem. And then it says, and I'll show you how to get rid of this problem. Now, knowing these things, why would you walk around looking miserable? You should walk around looking really happy. So, we have this right view. Right view lets us understand the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths allows us to start along the path. And so we start with right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So our speech has to be pleasant. You can't walk around being nasty to people. It's not very Buddhist. I've had people say that to me in the past when I was wearing my Buddhist shirt and my little label. You say, that's not very Buddhist. So I used to say to them, well, I didn't say I was a good Buddhist. I said I was a Buddhist. That was my stock standard answer for that one. But as I say, people are watching us all the time. So we have to have pleasant speech. Even if we don't want to. You can't call somebody an idiot just because they're being an idiot. You know? You might want to, but it's not the right thing to do. You have to have a gentle nature. We can't be shouting. You know, when I was supervising people in the fruit industry, for a while there I was considered to be a really good supervisor because all of my workers were scared of me. I knew how to swear in Russian, Bulgarian, Spanish, Maori. I could swear in many different languages. That was one of the first things I learned when I learned a new language, was how to be rude to people, because I found it beneficial in my job. And I could be very, very nasty to people. But in actual fact, those people had no respect for me. They may have feared me from time to time. I remember, I wasn't averse to warning somebody if they didn't listen to what I told them to do. I'd be quite happy to smack them right in the mouth. I can talk nasty to you, but you talk nasty back to me, and you're going to get one of these. It's not the way we should be. And I actually found out eventually, as I progressed along the path of Buddhism, and I was talking about faking it until you make it. There were people I really didn't like, but I actually stopped talking nasty to them. And then eventually, I found that I was getting on better with these people. I actually stopped disliking them. And I actually found that people wanted to actually work with my crew because they had a good supervisor. And I got as much, if not more, work out of those people by having gentle speech. So if somebody was doing something wrong, instead of telling them that they were an idiot, and I couldn't believe that they'd survived that long in life with that lack of brains, I went back to trying to help them to do the job correctly. And I found that by doing this, they got better at what they were doing. And so we need to make sure that our speech is good. And the other thing with right speech is not only does it have to be true, but it must also be beneficial. Maybe the person is a complete and utter idiot. So maybe if you were to say to that person, you're just an idiot, you might be truthful, but is it beneficial? Probably not, So we find another way of helping that person stop being such a fool. Because to call him an idiot is unbeneficial. It will achieve nothing except possibly make that person hate you. And that's not what we want. Now, when we're sitting at home, you've had a hard day at work, you come home, you have some dinner, what do? Sit down, turn on the television set, put your feet up, grab a beer, and ignore the children. Can't do that either. Never mind the beer drinking thing, We need to spend quality time with our children. But quality time doesn't mean pushing them to do their homework. Yeah, our children have to do their homework, But we need to spend some time chatting to our children. Asking our children, how was their day? Did they have a good day? Did they have a bad day? It's amazing what we might find out from our children if we actually spend a little bit of time actually having a little chat with them. Maybe we can introduce a little bit of Dharma into our conversations. But if we're going to introduce Dharma into our conversations, do not make it a Dharma class. They've been at school all day. They don't want another class. That's the last thing they want. But you know, maybe, you know, when you're talking to your child and your child says, oh, you know, this new boy at school and he looks a little bit different and everybody bullies him. So now you can ask, how would the Buddha think about this? What would the Buddha say? And see what your child has to respond to that sort of a question. Easy, light. Don't, how do you say it? We don't want to follow on Dhamma class at home. You know, they'll come to school, they'll get an education there, and maybe you bring them to the temple on Sunday for the Sunday Dharma school. You don't need to ram it down their throats at home. You know, just keep it light, keep it simple. Don't go to the top. And remember, our children aren't stupid. They know hypocrisy when they see it. There was a survey done just recently in Thailand amongst school children. And one of the things the children commented on the most was they wanted their parents to start living a virtuous lifestyle. Imagine that. The majority of Thai children surveyed did not believe that the lifestyle of their parents was virtuous. It's pretty sad, huh? And this is the thing, the kids see this. You know, when I was about 13, and I was starting to take my drugs, and so my mum said to me, she said, listen boy, she said, if you're going to smoke this stuff, she said, smoke it at home. I don't want you smoking it out on the street. Now, I don't know if she thought that by allowing me to smoke it, I would stop. Like he's doing this to rebel against me, so I'll allow it. Because it didn't work. It didn't stop me smoking it outside, but it also meant I wasn't allowed to smoke it in the house, but I could go and sit in the backyard and roll the spliff up and get high. Well, one day, my stepfather was sitting there. I was just about to go outside, just go to the backyard for a while. I may be hungry when I get back. My stepfather was sitting there, and he's going, oh, you think you're so clever, you and your drugs. Only stupid people do drugs. And I'm sat there looking at him. He's got a cigarette in one hand, and he's got a beer in the other hand, and he's giving me a lecture on drugs. And the only word going through my head is hypocrite. But his argument is, well, this is legal. Well, that makes it okay then. You know. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, alcohol makes people violent, marijuana doesn't. You're an idiot. You know, and he's trying to give me a lecture. So we can see that children do observe what their parents are doing. You know, we get into this do as I say, not as I do routine. It doesn't work. You know. Children don't buy that. So now we just look at being a Buddhist in the workplace. Not an easy task sometimes. It's okay if you work here at the temple, or if you work in a Buddhist center, and it's probably quite easy being a Buddhist at that particular workplace. But we don't always work at temples, we don't always work at these centres. And so we have to try a little bit harder. You know, before I was a Buddhist, I used to do work in various workplaces. We got up to all sorts of funny business, didn't we? You know, heck, we went to work to have fun. We made the best of a bad situation. You know. We had no choice but to work unless you go on unemployment benefit, and that never paid enough money. Not for the things that I wanted to get up to when I was a young fellow. So we get up to all sorts of tricks. You start work at 8 and you finish work at 5. Well, actually, 5 past 8 we can start work. Maybe knock off at 5 to 5. I don't know about here, but back home we get 2 15-minute paid breaks during the day, plus a 30-minute lunch break. So we take 20 minutes at morning tea, or morning smoko as we call it, 20 minutes at afternoon smoko, because these are paid breaks. So now we've stolen 20 minutes of our employer's time. And even lunchtime, we might take an extra 5 minutes. That's 25 minutes of the employer's time every day for a year. 5 days, 6 days a week. And that's only one employee. You imagine if there's 20, 30, 50, 100 employees working in a company, each stealing 25 minutes of time per day. It's a lot of money out of the boss's pocket. You know? It's stealing. We're not allowed to do it. If you're supposed to start work at 8, we start work at 8. Finish at 5. Take your 15-minute breaks, not your 20-minute breaks. Because otherwise it's stealing. I've said before, we take the pen home. We take the paper clips home. Those little yellow sticky note things. Put it in our pocket, we take it home. In New Zealand we call that perks of the job. In Buddhism we call it taking what's not given. I think, oh, there's hundreds of them in the stationery cupboard. There won't be if everybody keeps taking them home. There'll be nothing in the stationery cupboard. Unless the boss says you can take that pen home or whatever, it's stealing. No, it's dishonest. Then gossip. How much time do we spend gossiping? Gossiping about what other people may or may not have been up to. And involved in idle chitty chatter. You know, we gossip about people we don't know if it's true. And we have seen instances of people committing suicide because of gossip. So we have to be very careful. Our tongue can be used for good, or our tongue can be used for bad. Imagine if you spread some rumour about some person and the next thing you find out that person's committed suicide because of what was being said. How would you feel knowing that you took part in that gossip session? So it is, it's really hurtful. When I say idle chatter, and quite often it's just about what we watched on television last night. Who cares? Remember years ago there was a girl, she lived in the same apartment block as me. Single mum, she didn't work. Lovely girl. I used to come home from work, get home 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And she'd be straight in my door. And she'd go, oh, Angie did such and such, and Derek got really angry and hit her, and he's like, and I'm sitting there going, what the hell are you talking about? And then it would dawn on me. She'd been watching soap operas. She knew the names of all the characters of all the different soaps. And she'd watch these soap operas during the day, and then she'd come and she'd want to tell me all about what had happened. And he'd say, I don't care. Not interested. It's idle chatter. But she had nothing better to do with her time. Idle chatter is what the Buddha referred to as base talk, low talk, animal talk. We should spend more of our time discussing the Dhamma. If you want to talk to people about what you watched last night, you should say, I was on YouTube last night and there was a really interesting Dhamma talk about such and such, by such and such. Now we're not having idle chatter. This is good talk. This is the kind of talk that we want to be having. You know, if somebody says something about us that we don't like, we don't respond harshly. Sometimes people say nasty things about us because they're having a bad day. We don't know, so we don't need to respond in a nasty manner. We can just walk away. Maybe we can say to them, look, I really don't appreciate the way that you spoke to me, and if you've got an issue, perhaps you could have put it slightly differently. But we don't start yelling and carrying on. And then there's lying. Now, again, in the workplace, maybe there's two of you who are being considered for a promotion. So, with this promotion, it's going to be a bit more money. Maybe a company car. Yeah, very nice. A company car. Slightly less hours. Oh, wonderful. Now, sometimes we can start spreading little rumours about the other person, hoping that it gets back to the boss, because we want that promotion. We don't want the other person to have the promotion. Even if they do deserve it, we can start making little suggestions about why that person shouldn't really get that job. Probably one of the best things you can do is, and I did this once, I was offered a job as a foreman, and I said to the boss, geez, I'm not sure if I'm the right bloke for the job. He said, why not? And I said, well, first of all, I said, I've been here for 3 months. I said, the least amount of time the next person's been here, I said, it's been 2 years. You've got people that have been here for 8 years. So, don't you think that'd make a better foreman? And he said, no. He said, they're lazy, they're stupid. He said, I think you'd make a better foreman. But you see, I actually tried to elevate somebody else. And we can do that. Sometimes we can say, well, I'm not sure, boss. I'm not sure if I'm capable of doing the job. And then one or two things will happen. You'll either A, not get the job, or B, you will get it. Now if you don't get the job, next time there's a promotion, you're going to be first in line for that promotion. If you do get the job, the boss is going to have some support staff around you to help you, because you've been honest enough to say that you're not quite sure if you're really qualified to do the job. But you've not put the other person down. This is something that we can't do, is try and put the other person down to elevate ourselves up. Now if the other person gets the job, what do? We're happy for them. See, sometimes we have to step back and say, if I got that job, if I got that pay rise, if I got the company car, would I be happy? Yeah. Oh yeah. So let's be happy for the person that's got it. Not easy, I don't know, I should got that job. Wrong attitude. Be happy for the person that got the job. The happiness that you would have felt, give it to them. And don't go and sabotage them at every possible point. Assist them in their job. Don't try to make their job so bad that they either quit or they get sacked. You've got to have some integrity. Now, of course, there are some jobs that as Buddhists we should not be participating in. The trade in animals, working on farms that rear animals for slaughter, working in the slaughterhouse or working at the butcher's shop. Jobs that we should definitely not be taking on. The trade in intoxicants. So we shouldn't be working at the brewery, making the beer, shouldn't be the salesman selling the beer, and now becomes a bit of a difficult one, and I'm not quite sure how to answer this. What happens if you're a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant? And somebody comes in and they're not just going to look at the menu and walk out being satisfied, they're actually going to order something and want to have it in the restaurant. So they come in and they look at the menu and, I'll have the mee goreng, curry laksa, and give me a tiger beer, please. Do you take the water for the tiger beer? I don't know. That's a toughie, huh? Are we actually in the intoxicants trade or not? Now, I know in New Zealand, for instance, you can actually, on religious grounds, refuse to serve stuff like alcohol to people. So you can get another waiter or another waitress. You might take the food order and say, I'll be back in one moment, and then you send another waiter or waitress and say, look, that guy wants to order some drinks, could you take the drink order? And they will allow that on religious grounds. So in some countries they actually recognise that for certain religious reasons we can't do some stuff. But others we have to use a little bit of integrity, and so I don't know, when it comes to being a waitress, maybe you just got to like and take the order and give them his tiger beer. The trade in weapons. Guns, for the most part, are used to kill. We hunt with guns, and we all too often we shoot people with guns as well. I know that some weapons, we have target stuff. In the Olympics we have target shooting and all that sort of thing. Probably fine, so if you know that what you're selling is for target practice, maybe that's alright. But generally speaking, we don't know what a weapon's going to be used for, but 99.9% of the time, we can be fairly sure it's going to be used for killing something or someone. And so we should steer clear of the... This includes things like knives. I don't mean knives what you eat with. I mean, although you could kill somebody with a knife, but some knives are, these throwing knives, these well-balanced, beautiful, these kung fu style things. Generally speaking, they're weapons. They have a purpose, and that purpose is to stop an opponent very quickly, very decisively. And so we have to steer clear of the trade in weapons. And of course, the trade in human beings, which unfortunately today there's still a heck of a lot of trade in human beings, and so we have to steer very well clear of these particular occupations. Now, another problem in the workplace, and again I don't know if it's such a big issue here, but back home we have the office Christmas party. And everybody goes to the office Christmas party because it usually means the boss has actually opened up his wallet for a change, taken some money out and bought some stuff for us to enjoy, like alcohol. So he puts on a big spread, there's a bit of food, we've got to have a little bit of food, and there's a lot of drinking. So we get stuck into the booze, and the old inhibitions go down, don't they? The more we drink, the more our brains fog up. And there's been a lot of marriages, a lot of relationships collapsed because of the office party. Because people can be a bit inappropriate when they get inebriated. It's even worse today because we have these telephones. So you might be being a little bit friendly with somebody, you shouldn't really be that friendly with. And one of your boozy office mates is taking a picture, and you can upload it automatically to Facebook or to Twitter. It's too late, it's out there, you know. And so relationships go down the tube very, very quickly at some of these office parties. I've known of people who've lost their jobs because of the way they behaved at the Christmas office party. They haven't had a New Year's job because of inappropriate behaviour. I don't know if they do it these days, but you know, it used to be a big fad years ago to photocopy your bottom. People would run out into the photocopying machine, jump up on the top, photocopy their bottom, and then pass out photographs to everybody. This was because we didn't have these cameras in those days, so we had to use photocopiers. Bit embarrassing, you know, these sorts of things. So we have to be careful there. And then what about some of you people who are actually businessmen or businesswomen? Not being sexist here, I'm just business people. You have your own business. As Buddhists, we have to be ethical in our business. You know, so many times you go onto the news, you go onto the internet, and you hear of some sweatshop in some third world country where we have children 5, 6, 7 years of age working in absolutely abysmal circumstances, 12, 14, 16 hours per day for $1.50, $2 a day, for some company that sells high-class shoes, high-class handbags, high-class jeans. There's no ethics in that at all. And they sit there and they go, oh, we do check these places out. Not very often, obviously. And what do? Do they tell the people they're coming to check them out? Because I've seen this happen. I was working in England. I was driving a fork truck. I didn't have a fork truck permit, but I could drive a fork truck. I knew how to drive a fork truck. And every so often, this place used to be visited by health and safety. Health and safety used to phone them up 2 weeks before they came and said, on such and such a date we're coming to inspect your factory. So all the guards went back onto the equipment where we'd taken guards off, because sometimes if things break down it takes time to take a guard off to repair it. Those guards are there to stop the workers getting their hands mauled off and stuff like that. But we put all the guards back on the equipment and everything else. And when we saw health and safety turn up, I used to go and sit in the smoker room and drink some coffee, because I wasn't supposed to be on the fork truck. And they go away, and I get back on the fork truck and continue my work. And I think some of these companies, they probably tip off their factories. We're going to have an inspection on this date. And so when the inspector goes in, there's no children to be seen, just happy, smiley staff members being well looked after. This is unethical. And as Buddhists, we shouldn't be getting into this sort of thing. I mean, there's these companies, their stocks are doing well, but I'm going to tell you their karmic stock is looking lousy. The riches that they're enjoying today are going to be short-lived riches. They are going to be reborn in some woeful realms. This karma will catch up to them. We've got to be very careful. So as a boss, we have to be caring about our staff. You know, in New Zealand, you know, we have a minimum wage that at the age of 18, you cannot pay anybody 18 or over below, I don't know what it is now, maybe $16 an hour or something like that, maybe a bit more. But it's not enough money. 16 bucks an hour, I'll say roughly that's 45 ringgit an hour. It's not enough money for your average New Zealander to live on. They can pay their rent, they can buy some food, and if their parents, maybe they can afford to clothe their children to a degree and send them off to school. But that's all they can do. It's all they can do. They are surviving on their money. So at the moment they're pushing for what we call a living wage, which means they're going to have to pay people on average about $20.50 per hour. So that instead of surviving, we can begin to live. But big business hates this idea. And so they go, oh, well, all the prices will go up. Everything. If you give the people more money, the people will spend more money. It's a win-win situation for the economy. These people are worried about their own bottom line and they're worried about their shareholders. Nothing else. It has nothing to do with the economy. It's all to do with their pocket. Because their profits will go down slightly. And so their shareholders won't be happy. If you're a shareholder in a company like that, get out of it. And there's a problem when you're a shareholder, by the way. We have to be very, very careful when we invest in stocks and bonds, especially because we have a tendency, all this monk knows everything. We have brokers and our brokers take care of our money for us. We need to try and see exactly where the broker is putting our money to, because you actually might find that some of your money is going into a weapons manufacturer. If that's the case, you want to tell your stockbroker, get me out of that. I don't want to be involved in that sort of thing. Find me something ethical. I know it's very difficult. We try our best. But it's about time bosses start to become a little bit more honest in the way that they earn their money, and a little bit more transparent in what they do with their profit. Warren Buffett, the multi-billionaire, a few more dollars than you and I have got, he pays less tax per year than his secretary. And it's legal. That's what these big businesses are doing. It's so wrong. How can a corporation that makes so much money pay less tax than its secretary does? It hovers around the criminal region, in my opinion. If they paid more of their tax dollars back into the economy, then we would all have a better lifestyle. So big business today, it's all about taking, and they don't seem to want to give anything back in return. That's why, when I used to shop, I used to like going to these like here, and you don't get them quite so much here, but these little stores, in Thailand, you have all these people and they sell stuff at the side of the road. I'd much rather go and buy something off of them than go to 7-Eleven or to Tesco's. Big multi-corporations that are going to be hiding tax money here, there and everywhere. All these little fiddles they work out to pay less tax. No, I'd rather go to these little mar and pa establishments. I'd rather go and eat it very delicious than at some blooming great big multi-corporation hotel that's got a restaurant there. You look at these people around the corner. They're more honest with their money. And then politicians. What about politicians? Anybody here a politician? I don't know. Nobody's putting their hand up. Look, politicians enter politics because they want to make a better life for you and for me. Apparently. They get out there on the campaign trail. Well, you vote for me, and I'm anti-corruption. I'm anti-racism. I'm anti-this, and And next thing we discover that they're taking backhanders to turn a blind eye to this and to that. You know? They say, oh no, we don't want these people in our country. A bit of a backhander, we can get a few of them in there. So often our politicians, I don't know, they seem to forget. And they spend weeks and weeks making these promises, and then they get into Parliament and it's gone. They've just forgotten, you know. We say we need to increase the average weekly wage of the worker in this country, and the politician says we can't afford it. The economy is in a bit of a slump right now. We'll come back and we'll review this thing in about 5 or 20 years. And then they give themselves a wage increase. And they have these travel allowances, and these housing allowances, and everything else. Well, I have to travel to work, I need a travelling allowance. Everybody travels to work, they all need a travelling allowance. Oh, we can't afford it. No, the poor people away, you know, they always keep us down. So, that's not the mark of a good politician. A good politician, when he comes into Parliament, he should work for the people. He should work for the nation. He should not be working for him or for himself. So we can see that living in a Buddhist in today's society, we really, really do have to have a firm understanding of the teachings of the Buddha. We need not just to understand about Sila, we have to practice Sila. We have to put Sila into practice each and every day. Now, of course, we do break these things from time to time. As I say, we're human, we make mistakes. That's okay. We just try a little bit harder the next time. The more we practice, it's kind of like when you start riding a bicycle. When you first ride a bicycle, you're a bit of rubbish, You know, it's all wobbly and falling over and stuff like that. But the more we practice riding the bicycle, the better we get. And eventually we're racing down the road with our hands off the handlebars and our feet off the pedals. You know, we've gotten pretty good at riding bicycles. You know? And it's the same with the practice of our Sila. We make mistakes, we just try a little bit harder. And the more we put it into practice, the easier it's going to get for us. You know, and if you choose not to drink, not to gossip, not to do all of these sorts of things, now sometimes people will say, why aren't you having a drink? In New Zealand, they likely say, are you gay? I'm not coming out tonight, I want to stay home with my girlfriend. Why? Are you gay? Tell them. Say, look, I'm a Buddhist, and upon reflecting upon the teachings of the Buddha, I feel that it is better for me not to drink. I feel it's better for me not to gossip. I feel it's better. So, not only are you not doing an unwholesome action, but you're teaching the Dhamma. So cool. You're not ramming it down their throat. You're just telling them this because I'm a Buddhist and I believe that it's not virtuous for me personally to do these things. End of story. You've taught them the Dhamma. They asked for it. So you're allowed to do it that way. And there's one last thing I want to bring up here. And I was having a discussion the other day with the lady here. We've all come here tonight to listen to the Dhamma. And it's great. It's great. You come here and you attend the chanting. Many of you come here and you give Dhamma in the mornings. And that's really good. But when do you guys get together in your own home? Do you only meet here at the temple? have a cup of tea and some bickies when it's all over, and then go your own way. I've heard people complain that, especially people who moved from one country to another country, these are Buddhists who've gone off and they've gone to a Buddhist temple, and they've actually found that there's no support for them when they've gone to that temple. They're strangers in a strange city or a strange country, and there's no support for them. They turn up, they do the chanting, they go home. That's it, it's finished. The church do this. And the church do this really, really well. You know, it's not just people meeting on Sunday for a couple of hours in the morning or whatever to do some happy clappy singing and stuff like that. They have these fellowship groups, they call them. And so, you know, they'll say, okay, on Saturday we're going to Brother Eric's place. And everybody takes a little bit of tucker, a little bit of food that they've cooked or bought or whatever, and they all descend upon Eric's place, and they sit around being friends. A whole bunch of Buddhist people, maybe even have a couple of non-Buddhists come along, you know, oh, we're going out for lunch at Brother Eric's place. It doesn't have to be all about the Dhamma, but it tends to be a little bit more wholesome than other places that you might find yourself going to. You know? Now, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing. But wouldn't it be great if we could start doing this? If we could actually turn around and say, one Saturday, even if it's one Saturday per month, or one Sunday per month, we're going to meet at somebody's home. And we're going to take a little bit of grub with us, and we're going to fellowship together outside of the temple. We're actually going to get to know who one another are. And when we do this, we're going to find that some of these people that we're losing to Buddhism will get them back again. You know, because a lot of them, they're finding that things like the Christian church are a lot more user-friendly. So it's about time that we as Buddhists become user-friendly, and we'll bring back those people who are on the fringe, who are on the margins, bring them in. And maybe they'll bring some friends with them. You know? That's going to be Buddhism in action. This is the way that we are going to lead a lay Buddhist life. Thank you. Okay, so are there any questions, any comments? Anybody want to tell me off? Yeah. Yeah, there's house dharma, which is great, but I mean, what I'm actually talking about is, I mean, because house dharma, you walk some monks around and, you know, you do a bit of chanting and you give a dharma talk and then, you know, you give the monks some food and then you'll run away to another room. What's that all about, by the way? You invite me around to your house for dharma, you give me some food and then you run away. And I'm sitting at the table all by myself. Sad monk. We should eat together. We should eat together. You know, I went out to one Buddhist center one day, and after I'd finished my talk, it was a bit funny really. 9 ladies and 1 monk sitting at this table at the restaurant. But it was great. It was great. We went out and we had lunch dharma together. So yeah, it's true, lunch dharma is a good thing. But what I'm actually talking about is something that's really, really super informal. As soon as the monk gets here, it becomes a little bit formal. So these are issues where you don't have to invite the monk. If you don't invite me, but I discover that you've had an informal little gathering in your house, I'm just going to sit there and go, I'm not going to be upset at all. Because this is what we need. We need the people to start to get together. Because some of these people on the fringe, they don't necessarily need the Dhamma talk. What they're after is just the pure fellowship, just making friends with one another. And we do find that we become a little bit restrained when there are monks around. But it is great that you do have house Dhamma, and we do appreciate that. Anybody else? So who's giving the first party? We'll put you under pressure tonight. Okay, well, in that case we'll end it there. So, I'll end it. The Devas participate in the merits. Akasata Chabhumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyantam Manumokitva Chiram Rakantu Lokasasanam Devo Vasatu Karina Sassa Sampati Puja Ito Bhavatu Lokocha